cause that be natural.
Lady
I ain't
D.
looking tacky. I keep my game tactful.
Yo.
Yeah, I'm so nappy.
M.O.B.
Cause that be
The
natural. I
infamous.
ain't looking tacky cause I keep my game tactful.
I'm so pretty, I'm so fat, boo. I'm so natural, it's like it's a taboo. I'm so filthy, got the tattoo stuck in these bitches like I own ragu. On my business with my platoon, getting these minutes like I'm a typhoon. Y'all this jersey on that cartoon and I'm sitting on top.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Afros and Baby Hairs, and thanks for joining me in the reading room for book review number 29 on Murder Mamas by Ashley and JaQuavis. So, if you are interested in hearing details of this book as well as my thoughts and opinions, then please stay tuned. I am not and do not promote or encourage anyone to read this book who is under the age of 18. If you are under the age of 18, please get your parents' consent and or supervision before reading this book. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's get into this book review. So now I'm going to read the back of the book, and it reads, rip through the pages of the Cartel. Take a look through the eyes of a murder mama. Aries is a beautiful woman with an ugly secret. She's part of the Murder Mamas, a crew of murderers for hire. Now that Robin has been sentenced to die by the state of California, Aries is the only murder mama left standing. She's ready to bury her deadly past and live a normal life. Her husband and son in Barbados have no idea of her true identity and the things she's done, and she's happy to keep it that way. Unfortunately, Case has other plans. He's got a score to settle with Macy, a former partner who stole the woman he loved. Case might have let things go, except for one thing. Macy left behind the thug lifestyle to become the mayor of Los Angeles, and his new Clean Up the Streets campaign is seriously cutting into Case's business. Case wants the mayor dead, and he also wants the best in the business to get the job done. Aries still has an unpaid debt with Case, and he hunts her down to tell her he's willing to cancel the debt only if she completes the hit on Macy. Knowing that Case won't hesitate to kill her family, Aries has no choice but to take on the assignment. She returns to LA vowing this will be her last job, but the unexpected death of Macy's son sets off a chain of events that put all the players in serious danger. In this page-turning drama full of revenge, lies, murder, and mayhem, who will be left standing when the dust finally settles? Next, I'm going to introduce you to all of the characters. We have Casey James, aka Case. He's head of the black market of Los Angeles, and he's ex-best friend of Macy. Macy Siegel, he's an ex-drug dealer turned into city mayor, ex-best friend of Casey. Robin, she is a murder mama sentenced to death by lethal injection. Aries / Rachel Coleman is the last standing murder mama. She is also Prince Coleman's wife and Trey Coleman's mother. Prince Coleman, he's Rachel Coleman's husband and Trey Coleman's dad. Racist judge is responsible for sentencing Case's younger brother. Fatima is Case's ex-girlfriend and baby mama turned Macy's wife. Boomer is Fatima and Macy's son, who was really Case's son. Fruit is Boomer's best friend. Idris, aka Big E, is an ex-goon and head bodyguard to Macy. Jameson and Williams are cops who came to tell the Siegels about Boomer. Carter Diamond is Macy's Miami Connect. Polo is Carter Diamond's right hand. Mecca and Monroe are Carter Diamond's sons. Harlow and Jordan are goons Case placed with Aries. Chicago Larry is a pimp who ran the strip and the hookers. Hooker 1 is a white girl that robbed Boomer. Hooker 2 is a 17-year-old black girl that attempted to kill Big E. She was possibly Chicago's daughter. Roscoe, a bum that helped Macy get first aid. Senator Hayes is a senator that helped Macy out with funds. Now into the book. The prologue begins by introducing us to Case, a kingpin who is at an abandoned church holding a meeting. The congregation consists of every member of his team who crossed him or betrayed him since the mayor Macy Siegel organized a special team to take down drug operations. During this meeting, all of the double crossers were tied up and duct tape were placed over their mouths. At the end of the meeting, they were covered with gas and set on fire. Case talked to his men about taking out the mayor, but quickly came to the conclusion that none of them would be able to get close enough. However, one female in particular came to his mind, the last living murder mama. We also discover in the prelude that Aries was at the prison that Robin was currently being held in. However, this particular day was the day that Robin would die by lethal injection. Aries was there to witness. She knew Robin was going out because she refused to turn on her girls. After witnessing Robin's death, we find out that Aries has been hiding out for 5 years under the alias Rachel Coleman, now married to Prince Coleman, with a son by the name of Trey, who is 2 years old. Her husband and son have no clue about her past. Aries even changed her accent and currently resides in her hometown of Barbados. After flying back home, after visiting the prison, she returned to her housewife lifestyle. She saw her husband off to work and sent her son upstairs to nap when an unexpected visitor came by her home. All we know at this point, it was an enemy from her past that she wasn't prepared to see. In the first chapter, it's actually 5 years earlier. Robin and Aries meet with Case as he pours $1 million on a pool table. He has asked the murder mamas to kidnap the wife and daughter of the judge who was responsible for sentencing Case's brother. He needs the ladies to pull off the kidnapping in order to scare the judge into dismissing the case or finding him not guilty. The ladies are to kidnap the judge's family so that if he doesn't do what is required, the murder mamas are ordered to murk them. At first, Robin and Aries were hesitant to take the job because they weren't exactly kidnappers, but that $1 million in front of them looked too good to pass up, so they agreed to do the job. Then Case and the ladies discussed details about the judge's day-to-day routine, and Case gave them a key to his home. The day of execution, Robin was running late. They were supposed to break into the home before the judge left for work because this was the day he was supposed to be sentencing Case's brother. However, Robin got pulled over. She finally made it and she hopped in the car with Aries and headed to the judge's house. But on the way there, the judge passed them headed to work. They decided on a different plan but proceeded on to the house. They decided that they would still go and tie up the judge's wife, and after getting her situated, Aries would head over to the judge's office. So that's exactly what they did. Robin stayed there with the wife and Aries barged into the judge's office. He was busy putting on his robe and fixing his tie in the mirror, and at the same time telling the intruder his office was not open for business without even looking back. Aries sat on his desk and began to call Robin. The judge turned around and looked at her like she was crazy and tried to push her hand off of the phone. Aries overpowered him and told him he might want to hear what was about to be said. When Robin got on the phone, Aries told her to let the wife speak. So Robin ripped off the duct tape and the wife screamed out. The judge panicked and soon thereafter a gun was fired. The judge then went into cardiac arrest, and Aries was confused because she didn't know what had just happened or why. Aries eventually got out of there as quickly as possible. She tried to call Robin a few times but didn't get an answer, so she hurried back to the judge's house. Meanwhile, Robin has shot the judge's daughter, who apparently stayed home from school. I guess after she heard her mother's screams, it prompted her to come downstairs to see what the commotion was about. And that's when Robin shot her on sight and then immediately felt guilty about it, so she called 911, and by the time Aries made it to the scene, Robin was in handcuffs being placed in a cop car. Aries then figured they would connect the dots, so she decided to take the $1 million of Case's money and go in hiding. In the next chapter is back to present day, and Aries is face to face with Case. She is unarmed and afraid for her life. Case pretty much reminds her that she owes him since she took the $1 million and didn't exactly complete the mission. He also told her he had men posted all around her neighborhood if she tried any funny business. Eventually, he walked into the house uninvited. She told him she didn't have the money she owed him anymore. She split the money with Robin and used the rest to start her new life. She told him she now had a son and a husband. And Case told her all the information about her husband, Prince, that he was able to find out, down to where he currently was at the moment, because Case had a man on a motorcycle conveniently following him. He told her that his man was waiting on his call. Aries noticed that Case didn't come to take her out, and he seemed as if he needed something else. So she asked him what did he want from her. Case told her since she owed him $1 million, she needed to handle $1 million job for him, which was to take out Macy Siegel, a mayor that had interrupted his business by trying to clean up the streets. Aries was like no at first, because when she used to do high profile jobs like that, she would always have her girls to be her eyes and ears. She was never by herself. Case told her he knew she could pull it off and reminded her that she owed him. Later, Aries' son, Trey, came into the living room. And that's when Case reminded her that it would be in her son's best interest if she did the job. And then he told her to take him back in his room so they could further discuss. She ended up taking her son to the panic room where she knew he wouldn't be harmed if anything did pop off. When Aries returned to finish the meeting with Case, she asked him to tell her everything about the Macy guy because she felt like Case was leaving out some key details. Case began telling Aries the background story of him and Macy, and we discovered that Case and Macy went all the way back to grade school. They were best friends, even started the drug game together. However, when they got out of high school, even though they were running the streets and had made a name for themselves, Macy decided he wanted to leave it all behind and go to college. So ultimately, they were headed in two different directions in life. One night, when they went out, their goons came and told them that one of their trap houses had been robbed. So Case told Macy to take his girlfriend, Fatima, home, and he would go handle the robbery situation alone. He didn't want Macy to be a part of these type of situations anymore because he knew Macy was about to exit, and Case would have to handle them all anyway. So Macy attempted to take Fatima home. However, she was against going home by herself and wanted to stay with Macy until they got the call from Case. Macy ended up taking Fatima to his condo, which was more lavish and more upscale than where Case was living at in the hood. Long story short, Fatima started seeing Macy in a new light and liked how there were different sides to him. They ended up playing a game where truth telling and shots of tequila was being taken, and they ended up having unprotected sex. And that's when Macy decided that Fatima was going to be his girl. So I guess it's safe to say that this is what ultimately caused the men to have a vendetta with one another. Aries asked Case, was he doing this because of a woman? He told her no, because of the disrespect. He eventually caught Fatima sleeping in Macy's bed at his dorm room. She was butt naked. However, he knew that Fatima deserved someone like Macy, so he decided to take the high road. But this time, he wasn't about to let Macy take his operation. Aries understood where Case was coming from, and she had a few demands of her own, which were basically to have a nice hotel accommodations, a ride, and guns. She knew she had no other choice but to return to LA and complete the assignment before the upcoming election. Aries ended up telling her husband a pack of lies about her mother being sick and is about to die, so she needed to go over to the States and be with her. Prince was under the impression that Aries' mom didn't approve of the marriage and never wanted to meet her daughter's husband or child. When the reality was Aries' mom died when she was small. Anyway, Prince agreed to allowing Rachel back to the States. Macy had just got a standing ovation for a speech he had just delivered at a rally. Once off the stage, he was escorted by his security to his car. He had added security because of his past. He knew he was a moving target. Macy then headed over to his 15-year anniversary party with his wife, where family and close friends attended. Fatima was now his wife. Everything was going smooth until their 18-year-old son, Boomer, arrived drunk and high and began putting on a show. Boomer showed up with his best friend, Fruit. Anyway, when Macy tried to escort Boomer out, they had words because Boomer wanted everyone to know that Macy was actually just like him and was trying to give them the illusion that he wasn't. But What was revealed is that Macy knew that Boomer was not his biological son, but he never brought it up or questioned Fatima about it. However, everyone believed and carried on as if Macy was Boomer's father. Boomer also didn't know, so he really didn't understand why his dad treated him the way that he did. Macy basically kept his composure, although he was pissed and embarrassed by Boomer's behavior at the anniversary party for Fatima in front of all of their guests. Boomer was high off cocaine and weed and was acting and talking reckless. Macy turned his back to him, and that's when Boomer swung at him and missed because Macy stepped to the side. Eventually, Macy had his security to escort Boomer and Fruit off of the premises. Macy knew then that Boomer was a problem. Once Boomer and Fruit were driving on the highway, they discussed what happened back at the party as they snorted more cocaine. Fruit told Boomer he couldn't believe how he stepped to Macy. Fruit heard all the street stories about Macy and knew he was a legend. Boomer knew what Fruit was saying was true because he had witnessed some of the incidences firsthand as a child. Boomer was upset because Macy never introduced him to the drug world. Always made him work for everything. But what was bothering Boomer the most is that Macy didn't allow him to call him dad. Either way, for embarrassing him at the party, Boomer wanted to get back at Macy, so he eventually devised the perfect plan. He knew that Macy had a stash of dirty money hidden in a safe behind a painting in their home. Macy had kept it there since leaving the drug game. However, Boomer knew all about it and had been pinching off of it for a while because he knew that Macy didn't ever check it. Anyhow, Boomer came up with a plan to take it all this time, and it was close to $1 million in that duffel bag. Fruit was definitely down to accompany Boomer on the robbery, so they went to the family home and snatched the whole stash. Aries was sitting a couple of houses down, stalking out Macy's estate. She had her binoculars on and noticed two men leaving with a duffel bag. She had no clue as to who they were. After the men left, Macy and Fatima were escorted to the home by the bodyguards, and once they were inside, Macy signaled for them to leave from a window. Then Macy and his wife began preparing to continue celebrating their anniversary. Macy noticed that his Martin Luther King painting was crooked, and then noticed that the safe behind it wasn't closed like he had left it. So when he opened it, that's when he discovered the contents had been removed, and he saw the note that read F you. Macy was furious and told Fatima he knew it was Boomer and he wasn't about to tolerate the disrespect. Boomer and Fruit went out and got a luxurious hotel suite, mountains of coke, and a hooker. They were in the hotel room for 3 days, wilding out, especially Boomer. He was snorting cocaine and banging out with the hooker constantly for 3 days. Fruit didn't entertain the hooker and was very uneasy about the situation because, for one, he was coming down from his high, and for two, he grew up and admired and respected Macy. So when Fruit saw that Boomer was snorting way too much and throwing massive amounts of money on the hooker, he tried to get Boomer to slow down. The tip of the iceberg was when Boomer allowed the hooker to smoke crack from a pipe, and then he began to smoke it with her. Fruit decided to pull himself out of the equation and go talk to Macy. Fruit didn't want any parts of the repercussions. Macy was in his office discussing with his head bodyguard, Big E, who was also ex-coon, about his son's disrespecting him by robbing him of $1 million. He told Big E to put word out on the street that whoever could tell him Boomer's whereabouts would get 10 stacks. As they were discussing, a cleaning lady entered the office, which was actually Aries under disguise. She was wearing a wig and had cleaning supplies. She thought that Macy would be alone, but quickly realized he was never alone, and so she had to devise another plan. She played it all off by telling the men she thought that they were gone for the day, since it was after 5 p.m. and Macy told her they were just about to leave, and they did. Fruit made it to Macy's estate and was stopped by security. They ended up tackling and punching out Fruit, and that's when Macy came outside to see what was going on. Once Macy made it outside, Fruit told him about Boomer and how he was wilding out, and that's when Macy told the guards to release Fruit so that they could go inside and discuss. In Fruit's mind, he thought that by telling Macy what happened, he would redeem himself. So he told Macy that he told Boomer not to do it and told him it was all Boomer's idea to rob the safe, which confirmed Macy's suspicion. Then Fruit gave Macy the location of the hotel where Boomer and the hooker were staying. He also gave Macy the room key. Once Macy got all the info out of Fruit, he had the bodyguard to shoot him, and Macy finished him with 2 more shots and then ordered the guards to clean it all up. Macy then headed out to find his money before Boomer did something stupid or blew it all. Meanwhile, after smoking crack with the hooker and being so out of his mind that he couldn't move, the hooker knocked Boomer in the head with a lamp, almost knocking him unconscious. When the hooker found out that Boomer had robbed someone for $1 million, she told her pimp about it, and they devised a plan to rob him. The hooker packed up all of her things and all of the money and ran out to her pimp, who was waiting in the car for her at the hotel entrance. Boomer, on the other hand, was discombobulated. It took him 3 attempts to actually gather himself and get up. Once he realized what had transpired, he decided to go after the hooker. But once he opened the door to leave, he was face to face with Macy and the bodyguard. At first, Macy came at Boomer like a father would. He told him he was disappointed in what he did, and for a moment, Boomer had regret, because Macy did raise him. So he told Macy that the hooker knocked him out and ran off with the money. Macy told him he had till morning to get the money, and Boomer agreed, but because he was still high, he felt disrespected and cocky all at the same time, and that's when he told Macy he would get the money back by morning, then call him a B word. Before Macy knew it, he had shot Boomer between the eyes and then ran out of a back exit of the hotel. Macy couldn't believe he had taken out his own family, but he knew at the rate Boomer was going, he would eventually come for him. He sat in his car, watching Fatima pace back and forth through the upstairs window of their home. He didn't know how she would respond, and he couldn't face her now, especially because Fatima and Boomer had the same eyes. So he decided to head over to his office, and on the drive over, he called his head guard to meet him there with some clothes. Once Big E, the head bodyguard, arrived at Macy's office with a change of clothes, he noticed why Macy needed the clothes. He saw the blood stains on the suit. Macy told Big E what happened and that he needed the situation to go away. So he gave Big E an envelope containing $20,000 so that he can convince the clerk to give him the surveillance tapes. Macy and Big E also came up with an alibi that they were together at the office working late. Big E headed over to the hotel, and when he saw the Chinese girl sitting behind the desk, he began to put the plan in motion. Basically, after being offered 20 stacks and then thinking about her bills and tuition that was due, she decided to agree to let Big E in the back office to get the tapes and erase any other footage. However, he told the girl to forget she saw him after he got a copy of her license. Macy was laying in bed with Fatima. Macy was busy looking in a financial magazine, and Fatima was laying next to him, worried sick with bloodshot eyes. She was worried about Boomer and wished that he would come home. Macy's conscience was eating at him, and he really didn't know if he could keep up with the charade. He told Fatima that this was usual behavior for Boomer when he got high, and that he would come around soon, which made Fatima feel better briefly. However, moments later, there was a knock at the door, and Fatima hopped up to answer it, assuming it was Boomer. She also figured it couldn't be anyone else at 2 o'clock in the morning. However, when she got to the door, Officer Jameson and Officer Williams were standing there and had come to deliver the fatal news about their son. Macy soon joined Fatima at the door to face the inevitable as he greeted the officers by name. They told the couple that their son had been murdered and that one of them would need to come and identify the body. Fatima lost it and collapsed into Macy's arms as he excused the officers. Things weren't looking too good for Macy politically after the death of Boomer, because Fatima was not the same anymore. He He had been used to her holding him up and making him look good, and now with her grieving, she couldn't be his backbone. Due to Boomer being killed, a lot of things were being dug up about Macy's past and a connection to the drug game. It took the light off of his position as mayor and started making him look bad. Macy told Big E to handle the officers on their payroll and make the issue about Boomer go away. However, deep down inside, Macy knew that karma was around the corner. On the day of Boomer's funeral at the burial site, when the pastor finished his sermon and the lady began to sing as Boomer was being lowered into the ground, Fatima lost it, and Macy was contemplating on stepping down as mayor. He knew that deep inside he was still a street. He knew that deep inside he was still street, and Boomer was proof of that. Across the way sat Case, who had always been jealous of Macy, and he reminisced on the day it all began to unfold. Basically, back in the day, Case felt some type of way about Macy not allowing him to meet their connect. Case felt like Macy was keeping him beneath him so he could shine. However, that wasn't the case at all. The reality was that Macy hadn't ever met the connect face to face, and Macy wasn't trying to keep Case beneath him. It was actually Case's lack of business skill. Anyhow, one day Diamond Carter himself sent for Macy. He wanted to finally meet him face to face, so he flew him out, all expenses paid. Meanwhile, Macy told Case to drive out to Miami with the guns. Once Macy arrived at the mansion, the gentleman sat poolside and had drinks, and then they went to the pool house. Inside of the small pool house, there was Polo waiting. Carter Diamond introduced them, but the gentlemen were staring each other down. Macy didn't back down. That's when Carter told them they needed to go downstairs, and at this point there was no stairs visible nor any indicators that there was a downstairs. That's when Carter walked over to the bookshelf and removed a book that revealed the lever. Once he pulled on the lever, the wall moved and the staircase was revealed. The gentleman went downstairs to a room that had a pleasant ambience and didn't seem like a basement at all, until Macy noticed a man tied to a chair with a potato sack over his head. That's when Carter told Macy that he has been watching him for a while. He had sent some of his men out to LA to see how was this young cat making cocaine disappear so quickly. So he had to be sure that Macy wasn't the feds. Then he told Macy that he didn't like how his right-hand man Case was moving. He was cocky and flashy. So he told Macy that Case was sitting in the chair and that if he could off his right hand, he would be connected for life. However, Macy told him if he was going to murk his right hand, he may as well murk him too. Carter was actually just testing Macy's loyalty, and he passed with flying colors. The next test would be to test Macy's gangster, as well as a test to see if he was a fed. So he told him the guy that was in the chair was the guy's place he would be taking, because dude had been talking to the feds. He told Macy to take him out, and Macy put 2 in the dude's dome without hesitation. That's when Carter decided to bring Macy all the way in and told him he could have as much coke as he wanted on consignment. Now, when Macy told the story of what happened to Case, Macy told Case what had happened when he went to visit the Connect, and that's when jealousy set in. Case couldn't understand why he wasn't invited and felt like Macy was keeping him out of the loop, only to build himself up. So anyway, over the next few weeks, Fatima's depression got worse, and Macy tried his best to get her over it, but nothing seemed to be working. So he gave her his black card and told her to go on a shopping spree, and then afterwards she was to check into a spa and stay as long as she wanted. So that cheered her up a little. He then left for work, and Fatima got up and got dressed for her day of shopping. She went on Rodeo Drive to hit up some of her favorite stores. She was feeling a bit better and normal until people started staring and whispering, and then when she headed out of one of the stores, the paparazzi and cameras bombarded her. They were asking her questions about her son's death and felt like Macy's past with the drug game is what got her son killed. Fatima had learned long ago never to answer any of the reporters' questions because she knew they would twist her words, so she gave them a cold shoulder and headed to the trunk to put her bags in. Once she opened the trunk, she saw Macy's bloody clothes, and she remembered that it was the same outfit he wore the night of their anniversary. She hurried and closed the trunk before the paparazzi could see, and then she headed to the beach to think. She wondered why she couldn't mourn her son's death in peace. She also wondered why Macy had bloody clothes in the trunk and why was he hiding them. Her mind raced, but she figured they could have been anybody's that could have been anybody's blood, but she decided to ask him about it later. Fatima ended up calling Macy and telling him she was about an hour away. Anyway, but in reality, she was sitting in the driveway. She grabbed the bloody clothes and quietly came in the house. When she got to his office, she realized he wasn't alone, and she wasn't one to air their business out. So she decided to ask him about the clothes later. That's when she put her ear to the door and overheard Macy confessing to Big E that he was responsible for killing Boomer. That's when Fatima stormed in and went ballistic on Macy. She threw paper weights at him with the intent to harm and everything else heavy that she could find. When Big E tried to grab her, she threatened him too. Once she destroyed Macy's office, she ran out of the house and jumped in her car, and Macy chased her. In the driveway, Fatima almost ran over Macy with the car until he finally jumped out of the way. When he saw she meant business, Big E was watching from upstairs window, telling Macy to get out of the way. It wasn't Big E's first time seeing Fatima go crazy, so he knew what she was capable of. Fatima hit the street driving around for hours, but soon realized she had nowhere to turn because everyone was tied to Macy in some form or fashion. And that's when she went to Case's house. She explained to Case what had happened and revealed to him that Boomer was his son. Case was furious, shocked, and overwhelmed all at the same time. He asked her, did Macy know that Boomer was his? And Fatima told him that he never spoke on it, but she felt like he knew. Long story short, Case hated that he never got to bond with his son and thought about all the things he missed. He wished that Fatima would have told him earlier because he felt like knowing he had a seed would have made him a better man. Anyhow, the two of them rekindled their flame and proceeded to make another child together. They also made plans to get revenge. Fatima also knew that everything was her fault and this was her karma. Macy was having a hard time at work because he was busy trying to reach Fatima and only getting her voicemail. He figured that Fatima would face him when she was ready. After a while, Macy decided to gather his things and leave his office. He got into the car that was waiting for him, and after driving a few feet, he heard the tire blow out on the vehicle. The driver got out and asked Macy to help. And when they got to the back and opened the trunk, that's when Aries pulled off her hat and stuck her pistol in Macy's side and told him to get in the trunk where his normal driver's dead body was already laying. Macy was shocked that a beautiful woman was sent to do the job, so he felt it would be easy to talk her out of it until Aries grazed his face with a bullet. That's when Macy pushed the dead body further to the back and got in, and Aries basically closed the trunk before he got in there good. Macy was mad at himself that he was caught slipping. He tried to call his right hand on the cell phone he had remembered was in his pocket, but his reception went out. Then Macy decided to kick the tail lights out and stick his hand out of the hole in hopes to distract the person driving behind them. And it actually worked. However, the person behind them was a young goon that Case had provided Aries with. Once they pulled over, the goon told Aries what Macy had did, so they opened the trunk and knocked him out cold with the butt of the gun. They took Macy to a rental property across town where the other goon that Case teamed up with, Aries, was waiting. His name was Jordan. And when he realized who the victim was, he didn't feel too good about the kidnapping. They eventually tied Macy up to a chair. Aries tortured him for a bit and then shot him in the hand. She called Case to let him know they had Macy at the spot. Later, Casey showed up, and that's when everything started to make sense to Macy. Case pretty much told Macy that they had an agreement. He was supposed to keep the cops out of his operation. In return, Case funded several of Macy's political endeavors. He was a sponsor and paid other public officials to stand behind Macy. However, Macy didn't uphold his end of the bargain, and Case had been keeping a ledger of all the transactions in a black book. The information in the book alone could have sent Macy and a few other politicians to prison. Either way, Case wanted his money back, the entire $720,000, and he wanted it all in dirty money within 48 hours. Macy had remembered his stash that was in his home safe. The reason he killed Boomer? Well, that was the dirty money he needed to get out of this situation, and the same money Case was about to murk him over now. Case gave Macy a burner phone to call who he needed to call, but told him not to get cute. Aries held the phone to Macy's ear as he called Big E. He pretty much told Big E to go find the hooker and get the money from her. Until then, he would be tied up, and that he only had 2 days to get the money. Macy told Big E to tell Fatima that he was sorry and never meant to hurt her. He then told Big E to not come until he had all of the money and to not come alone. And that's when Aries hung up the phone. Big E was trying to read between the lines and felt like Macy was saying goodbye. Case, on the other hand, told Macy he would tell Fatima what he said as they made love later that night. Macy tried to burst out of the ropes to get the Case, but ended up just falling over. Case laughed and told Aries to keep an eye on Macy. Then he left, laughing on the way out. When Macy was left in the basement alone with Jordan, he tried to get him to let him use the bathroom. Jordan was intimidated by Macy because he had heard the stories about him on the street, so he almost let Macy free. Luckily, Harlow was listening and came in to get on to Jordan and gave Macy a bottle to pee in. Big E headed to Rodeo to talk to a dude by the name of Chicago Larry. He ran the strip and all the hookers. Big E went into the basically empty diner and saw Chicago getting a manicure from an Asian girl. Chicago didn't look like a pimp. He actually looked more like a businessman. When he saw Big E come in, he knew that he was there for something major. So he greeted him and then dismissed the hooker to get back on the stroll. Big E didn't waste much time and asked Chicago did he know anything about a pimp and a hooker that robbed some woman at a hotel the other night. Chicago claimed that he hadn't heard anything about that, and if he did, he wouldn't be still sitting there pimping these girls. Even though he didn't sound too convincing and sweat was forming on his head, because he knew who Macy was and how he got down. He just didn't know at the time that his bottom hooker was robbing Macy's son. Big E told him that if he heard anything to give him a call, and then went in his pocket. Chicago was extremely nervous, and that's when Big E gave him the business card and left. He knew Chicago was lying, so he hopped in his car and watched Chicago through the window. 2 minutes hadn't even passed, and Chicago had hopped on his phone and was watching the front door of the diner to ensure that Big E wasn't coming back in. He had called the hooker who had robbed Boomer and told her to pack up everything because they were leaving sooner than they had planned. When he got off the phone with her, he headed straight to his home. He didn't know that Big E was telling him because Big E knew that Chicago was going to lead him straight to the money. Chicago wasn't in the house 5 minutes, and him and the hooker headed to his car with duffel bag in tow. Big E snuck up on Chicago with the gun drawn and asked Chicago what was in the bag. Chicago lied like he had won the lotto the night before. When Big E looked at the money, he knew that wasn't all of it, so he told Chicago to take him to the rest, which he was keeping at another hooker's house. Chicago drove over there at gunpoint. Once there, he made the hooker that robbed Boomer get in the trunk while they walked up to the other hooker's house. Once inside, the hooker was startled when she saw the gun, and then a naked white man came from the back that they dismissed and told him to come back later. Chicago finally told the hooker to go get the money, and she did. When she brought the book bag to the front, Chicago opened it to show Big E that it was all there. When Big E looked up, the hooker was pointing a .22 at him, and that's when Big E took her out. Chicago tried to stop her, but he was too slow. When Chicago realized that Big E shot his girl that was only 17 years old, rage filled him. So he grabbed the .22, but got beat to the punch by Big E too. Big E grabbed the money and dipped. Once Big E got so far, the police pulled up behind him. At first, it was only one car. Then eventually 2 more had pulled up. The hooker in the trunk had knocked out a tail light and was waving her hand out of the hole. She had gotten the police's attention, and after pulling Big E over, he called for backup. Anyway, the hooker suffocated in the trunk and died, so Big E had the dead white girl in the trunk, a gun on deck, and close to $1 million in his duffel bags. He knew he was screwed. Aries left the rental house and went to Casey's house to tell him that babysitting wasn't a part of her job criteria. She let him know that she was a murderer and not a kidnapper, and was basically just tired of sitting around watching Macy, Harlow, and Jordan. Case pretty much reminded her that she wasn't in a place to be making demands, and that her husband and son was in his back pocket. He also told her that it wouldn't be much longer. He was just waiting on his money. Macy tried to get in Jordan's head again. He asked him, was Harlow and Aries his boss, because they were always telling him what to do. Jordan replied that he was his own boss. He didn't work for nobody but himself, and then got cocky with it, asking Macy had he heard of him. He is Jordan Zamora. That's when Macy realized how stupid Jordan was, giving out his full name, but the Zamora last name rung a bell with Macy, so he thought for a moment and remembered his old worker, Tino Zamora, who became addicted to the product and started stealing money from him. He ended up having to kill Tino, but they made it look like a drug overdose. He told Jordan the story about when he came by his house after his dad died. Jordan was a little boy then. Macy saw him playing outside with a ball and walked over to him and handed him some brand new Jordans. Macy then walked on the porch where Jordan's mother was and handed her 10 stacks, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and then he left. Jordan remembered that day, and he remembered how much that money had helped his mama. So he began to have doubts about the whole kidnapping thing. His conscience was messing with him, and he started to feel bad about it all. Now, in the interrogation room, Big E knew they were going to fry him because of the dead white girl in the trunk, the weapon, and the money that was found in his whip. Big E didn't want to go to jail and leave his family, while the man he was doing this for was still free. That's when Big E decided to tell the cops that he knew that the mayor killed his son, his own son, and he could prove it because he had the tape. The cops had no idea until Big E told them. Big E felt like crap. He knew he would be labeled a snitch because he turned state evidence, but he knew that they would relocate him and his family. Fatima was laid up with Case and had been for the past few days, but she was anxious for Macy to be taken out, especially after she saw a clip of Macy on the news where they were saying he killed his own son before Case turned off the TV. So, she was ready for Macy to be killed because she was thinking that her and Case was going to be together. And that's when Case told her to not confuse sex with love, because deep inside he had no desire to be with Fatima after he killed Macy. It was only fun for him while Macy was alive. Fatima realized that she was being played and called Case out. And that's when Case tried to clean up what he had said. He told her he just meant that they should take things slow, and that he would always need her close so he could protect her. He told her he couldn't protect her if she wasn't with him. Case knew in his mind that this wasn't a good time for Fatima to leave because she knew too much and she could possibly talk too much. After the conversation, Case left and Fatima got up and got ready to leave. She knew that Case didn't want her and was trying to control her using fear. So she went to look for her keys and discovered that Case had taken them, so she called a taxi. What Fatima didn't know is that she had been plastered all over the news and that they wanted to ask her where her husband was. They pretty much wanted her to assist them with locating him, and she would have known that if Case had never turned off the news. Anyway, Fatima's plan was to go to the safe deposit box and get the life insurance papers and the money that was stashed there, so that after Macy was killed, she could collect her money and start over somewhere else. When her cab got there, she hopped in and told her driver to take her to the bank. However, the cab driver kept staring at her because he recognized her from the news. He thought that this would be an interesting ride, so he turned off the meter, especially after she told him she would pay him extra to stop staring at her. When she got to the bank, she went in and their personal banker came to greet her. She told him that she needed access to her safe deposit box in a private room. Once in the private room, she got the insurance papers and the 10 stacks and proceeded to leave. But as she was leaving, the bank managers tried to get her to sign a document. And that's when she noticed he was trembling and acting weird, but she just declined to sign and headed out the door. And that's when the police pulled up and she put two and two together. Fatima's mind was racing because she thought that the cops knew everything, even her involvement with Macy's kidnapping. So she was panicking. But what she did know is that she wasn't under arrest. They just needed a lead or help on locating Macy. And they wanted to question her about where she thought he was or where he could possibly be. Now, when Aries made it back to the rental property where Macy was being held, she noticed that Harlow and Jordan both were on the top floor and no one was watching Macy. So she started schooling them. That's when Harlow popped off saying that she wasn't his boss and he was talking reckless. Aries went and got in his face and told him he didn't know who he was talking to because she would body him so quick. And then she went down to check on Macy. Harlow and Jordan kind of sat there and talked about how they didn't like Aries and that they would shoot her. Macy started to get into Aries' head after she told him that the only reason why she was involved in this situation was because she owed Case and because he threatened her family. Other than that, she was pretty much retired but had no personal beef with Macy. Macy told her basically that she was being played. He made Aries realize that Case doesn't forgive any debts and that is the reason why he was sitting there tied up to a chair. He reminded her that Case wants less from him, only 720 stacks, and he was willing to kill him for it. He told Aries that Case probably has already bodied her family, and that's when Aries realized that she hadn't heard from her husband since she had been there, and she started thinking of all types of scenarios. She tried to call her husband on the cell, but the battery was about dead, and then she decided to leave to try to call home from another phone. Macy had Aries right where he wanted her, busy thinking about something else so she wouldn't be focused on him. Back at the precinct in the interrogation room where Fatima was brought in for questioning, she was sitting there alone with all kind of thoughts running through her head. By the time the detectives came in, she started telling everything she knew, incriminating herself. She told on Case's involvement. She told that Boomer was Case's baby, told that Case had kidnapped Macy and had plans to kill him. She told everything but had only been brought in for questioning. So after she was done telling everything, she knew they arrested her for being an accessory to kidnapping and put her in a cell. Then they went and got a warrant to arrest Case. Aries went to a nearby diner to call her husband, and eventually he answered the phone. She was relieved to hear his voice and was crying. And that's when Prince noticed and asked, was she okay? She pulled herself together and told him some lies about her mother's health condition and that she would be back home in about a week. All in all, she was glad that what Macy had said about Case wasn't the case right now. Aries was tired of the lies and the lifestyle, and at this point was ready to return home. She said goodbye to her husband and son and hung up. Back at the rental property was where Macy was being held. Harlow was growing tired of sitting in the house looking at walls like they were the ones being kidnapped. So he told Jordan he was going to leave to go get some food and that Jordan would be in charge while he was gone. Jordan tried to talk Harlow out of the idea, mainly because Jordan didn't really want to be there alone with Macy because he was so intimidating. Harlow basically told Jordan to stop being a weenie, handed him the gun and told him he would bring him some food back. That's when Jordan tried to remind Harlow about Aries, and Harlow was like, she goes and comes as she pleases, but they have to sit there and babysit. Then Harlow left. Of course, Macy took this as an opportunity to definitely get in Jordan's head. At first, Jordan wouldn't talk to Macy, but Macy kept talking. Jordan ended up telling Macy that they asked him if he wanted to make some money, and of course he said yes, but he had no idea that it was going to be him that they were kidnapping. Macy asked Jordan for some food, and Jordan told him no food was there. Then he asked for water, and Jordan went and got the water. That's when Macy knew he had Jordan where he wanted him. He knew Jordan was weak. That's when Macy began to finesse Jordan. He told him that if he let him free, he would pull him in on his team and he could make some real money. He told Jordan that his goons would be coming at any time. That's why he hadn't paid Case yet. He reminded Jordan that he had loan money. He could have immediately paid Case, but he was just waiting on his shooters to come through. Jordan told Macy he was in a lose-lose situation. If he crossed Case, he would murk him. And if he let Macy free, he would murk him. Either way, he would be a dead man. Long story short, Jordan ended up freeing Macy. That's when Macy beat Jordan down and then took the gun and shot him a few times because Macy was disgusted with him. He didn't like how weak Jordan was, how he couldn't stand on his own decision and was so indecisive. Macy felt like he would have never had someone like Jordan on his team. Macy ended up taking Jordan's phone and his car and dipping. Once Fatima was in her cell, the media was alerted and she was bombarded with reporters and cameras. She basically went crazy in front of the press, acting barbaric in front of them, screaming and spitting on them through the cell bars. It was a sight to see. And a side of Fatima, the mayor's wife, that they had never seen before. She gave them a complete circus act until one of the guards thought enough was enough, and after they were gone, Fatima hung herself. Case was back at his condo getting high off coke, and the more he snorted, the worse he was becoming. All of his hate and anger multiplied, and he was ready to whack Macy himself as he thought about all the traitorous moves Macy had made over the years. And so he stormed out with his rifle and headed out to the rental property. Macy was far away from the rental property at this point. He decided to give Big E a call. Little did he know that Big E was waiting on the call with the feds. They had Big E's phone wired and they were waiting for Macy to incriminate himself. Macy knew something was up when someone else answered Big E's phone. He also knew something was up with how Big E was talking, and soon Macy realized that Big E was setting him up. So he pretty much told Big E he didn't know what he was talking about and then hung up. Of course, Macy couldn't believe it, but he quickly went to plan B, and that was to go by his house and get to the money that was in his safe so he could flee. But when Macy pulled into his neighborhood, he quickly noticed the unmarked cars posted up, so going to his house was no longer an option. That's when he turned around and left his neighborhood and decided to give his senator buddy a call. He blackmailed the senator into helping him. Senator Hayes pretty much told Macy he would get him $75,000 delivered to a locker and to not call him ever again. He told him he would have it delivered in a couple of hours. In the meantime, Macy needed to get his bullet wound cared for, so he pulled into a shopping center parking lot and got a bum named Roscoe to go in and steal him some first aid supplies and a change of clothes. Macy also heard on the radio that he was wanted for murder and that if anyone saw him to report it to authorities. Macy eventually got the things he needed to treat his wounds, got his change of clothes, and went and got the money from the locker that the senator left him, and he dipped. When Case made it to the rental property, Harlow was pulling in at the same time. He got out of his car and Harlow got out of his carrying his fast food that Case knocked out of his hand because he was upset that Harlow had left. As they ran in the house, Case was asking Harlow where Aries was, and he said he didn't know because she was there when they left. Once inside the house, they discovered Macy was missing and Jordan was dead. Then Case called Aries to ask her where she was, and she lied like she was pulling into the rental property. However, when Aries finally did show up, she discovered the house was empty, so she decided to come clean to her husband about who she really was so that she could relocate her family. She called her husband and tried to explain, and at the same time tried to walk him through protecting himself and their son and getting to the airport. He was confused, but he followed her instructions and was prepared for the airport. Afterwards, Aries went looking for Macy for a while until she discovered how big California was and that he could be hiding anywhere. So she opted to head to Arizona so that she could meet her husband and son at the airport there. But after their plane landed and the passengers descended, her husband and son was nowhere to be found. And after waiting a minute, her phone rang, and she was sure it was Prince calling with an explanation. However, it was Case calling her to inform her that she was now a widow, and that's when Aries' killer instincts went into overdrive. 6 months had passed and Case relocated to Nevada. He was running a lucrative weed business there, living in a modest home, laying low. He was busy being entertained by some floozy when Aries found him. She made him suffer by putting a bullet in his privates and making him squirm for a while, and then she eventually finished him off. Macy was currently residing in South Dakota, working as a janitor at a local school and living a modest life as well. He was lonely and often missed Fatima. He had heard about her suicide on the news. Macy had a somewhat different appearance because he had let his beard grow out and he was now wearing regular clothes and not the expensive custom fitted suits he was used to. Anyway, one particular day when he got off work, he went into the bathroom to take a look at himself in the mirror. Aries ended up standing behind him with the gun to his dome. She just wanted to let him know that she could always find him if she wanted to, and at any time she could take his life. She told him it was because of him she was now a widow, and he told her it wasn't his fault but Case's, and she should be handling him. Aries let Macy know that she had already handled that problem. She let Macy live, but she told him she didn't know how she would feel tomorrow. When Aries got back to her hotel, her son was peacefully asleep. Prince had put Trey in the panic room before Case realized that he was there. So Prince saved their son, but ended up losing his own life. After Aries thought about all of her girls from the murder mamas that had fallen, and now her husband, she was ready to throw the towel in on the lifestyle because she had to be there for her son. Basically, she was done with murder for hire. And that is where the book ends. Now, here are my thoughts on this particular book. The book started off kind of slow, and I didn't like how weak they were making Aries seem at first. I feel like she should have been bar none from the very beginning. I also wish she would have come up with a plan to break Robin out of prison before they injected her. The other thing is, I feel like Aries should have told her husband who she really was from the beginning. That way she could have trained him and they could have been on some Bonnie and Clyde type stuff. You feel me? Also, I feel like Aries could have outwitted Case earlier on and then took him out, or maybe even joined forces with Macy since they both had a common enemy, and she would have been able to make money at least instead of trying to work off an old debt. I feel like Fatima was a high-end skank. She is so wrong for playing those best friends like that. And to think for 1 second that Case actually wanted her after that. Now also the goons Harlow and Jordan were straight trash. Both were weak youngsters who were not on Aries' level. He should have put her with some hitters, to help her out with this whole kidnapping. The next one is Big E was trash as well. He turned state evidence before they even got him in the interrogation room good. I understand that Macy was the one who had him out there doing reckless things, but Macy didn't put a gun to Big E's head and make him do it. Nor did Macy kidnap a hooker that died, shoot and kill another hooker that died, shoot and kill a pimp that died. Nor was Macy the one being pulled over with a weapon and a dead body and $1 million in a duffel bag. It was all Big E's choice, so he should have done his time for his crimes. Anyway, the book was a very good read, although Aries is not the only murder mama left standing, because we know that Mia Moore is still alive and well. She just in prison, and Breeze is also an honorary member. So altogether, you will have 3. So anyway, let me know y'all's thoughts on this book in the comment section below. Also, let me know if there are any more books in this Cartel series that I missed. Now, the next series will be on The Family Business 1 through 5 by Carl Weber. So cop your books now so we can start on that. Now, I do want to say that I did film this book review. I had visuals, but the audio was off, so I just decided to just go ahead and do a voiceover. So yeah, guys, I do want to thank you all for joining me today in the reading room once again. I really appreciate your time and energy. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next book review. Peace and love, and as always, be blissful.
DJ Mike C on the track.
cause that be natural.
Lady
I ain't looking tacky. I keep my game tactful.
Yo,
Yeah, I'm so nappy, cause that be natural.
the infamous.
I ain't looking tacky, cause I keep my game tactful.
I'm so pretty, I'm so fabu, I'm so natural, it's like it's a taboo. I'm so filthy, got the tattoo, fucking these bitches like I own ragu. On my business with my platoon, getting these minutes like I'm a typhoon. Y'all is jersey on that cartoon, and I'm still on top of these buffoons. I'm so natural, I'm so nappy. All these dudes that wanna get at me, I'm so cultured and I'm happy. Jealous witches wanna combat me, cause I'm comfortable in my skin. End of the day, you lose, I win. I'm so profitable in my ends, don't care if I make or lose a few friends, and I look like $1 trillion. Lady D won a lotto, cause in the Lord I trust, and beauty is the motto. Naturally thick in the butt, I'm Billy Blanks on the Tabo. Edges a little rough, just pretend I'm from Morocco. Organ all up in my hair, cause I let my locks grow naturally. My curls popping everywhere, I'm maximizing on this natural thing. Like it or not, I don't care. You clowns ain't about to worry me, cause I does this for myself, and I'm repping for my ancestry.
I'm so nappy, cause that be natural. I ain't looking tacky.